Eagles get the win 20-16 over the Browns. Eagles move to 3-2. Browns fall to 1-5.
Yeah.
I feel like we need sad music for all the Deshaun Watson Cleveland Browns stats.
The trombone sound?
Yeah, sad trombone for how bad the Browns offense is.
Michael Strahan apparently delivered the stat on the halftime Fox show that Deshaun Watson was 0 for his last 25 third downs. I know that got to at least 26 before I think he completed the next one. That's absolutely ridiculous. 26 straight third down failures for a guy.
Real?
Yes, for a guy you're paying $230 million guaranteed to.
What were they last week against the Commanders? Let's see here. They really didn't convert. Yeah. They were 1 for 13 as a team, so I assume, one of them was probably rushing. Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
The whole thing's bad.
I mean, it's not just bad. It's utterly abysmal. Like, it's one of the worst quarterback situations in years, and unlike the other ones, they are tied to him unlike any team has ever been tied to a quarterback before.
All right.
Like it's getting extremely toxic because after every one of these performances, the questions immediately go to Kevin Stefanski. So, are we still sticking with Deshaun Watson? And he's now just resorting to sort of single word responses. Like, yes, he is still our quarterback, that kind of thing, right? And it's not going to get any better. If you look at their schedule, it's actually been relatively kind up until this point, certainly in terms of pass defenses that they faced. And it's getting relatively difficult. So if they're genuinely like bolted to this guy and we refuse to make any kind of change going forward, this could get all-time terrible. And Mitchell Trubisky was pointing out yesterday.
Hold on. Schwartz?
Yes. Trubisky? Maybe Mitchell Trubisky was pointing out as well to his friends. But
Mitchell
Schwartz,
Trubisky was looking down at Deshaun Watson's performance because it's so much better than his.
I did see there was one of those memes that, like, Johnny Manziel is smiling somewhere because he's no longer the worst quarterback decision that the Browns have made. There's a bunch of these memes actually as well. Another one is that right now Watson has basically worse numbers than a guy who admitted to watching zero tape in the NFL at any point in his life. That's the kind of level we're at the moment. Mitchell Schwartz was pointing out that this is very unfair to everybody else in that locker room, right? We are refusing steadfastly to even acknowledge that we might look into making a quarterback change, which means guys like Myles Garrett, who's battling through multiple injuries, playing hurt and still balling out, jumping over lines and making block kicks, right?
The only reason why this was even close, by the way.
Joe Bitonio out there battling through, everything that an offensive lineman is battling through on a daily basis. Like, these guys are out here putting their bodies on the line for a team that is deliberately not trying to do their best to win because they don't want to look bad, because they've made this commitment to a guy they shouldn't have made it to, and they're now suffering through it. Like, this is a bad thing to be doing to a locker room who presumably has only a certain amount of patience with that.
So, to be fair, all of the efficiency metrics that we're talking about, I do feel like are more team-driven. But either way, so it's not all on Deshaun Watson, but there's
a connection, right?
Of course.
It's like the Flacco thing. There's something to this idea that when you put Flacco in the offense, on a throw-by-throw basis, his performance might not actually be that much better than Deshaun Watson or Anthony Richardson, but the overall performance of the offense is different, right? On a play-by-play, throw-by-throw basis, Deshaun Watson might not be quite as bad as his all-time wretched statistics suggest, but it's pretty clear that putting him in this offense leads to one of the worst offenses that the NFL has ever produced.
No, I know. The offensive line's bad. They're not doing anything well up front. Watson's horrendous. I like to read. Let's go read Austin Gill's Twitter. We need a whole segment where we just go read Austin Gill's Twitter.
Okay, go on.
So here's this one. Jamarcus Russell lost negative 63.8 total EPA on dropbacks in weeks 1 through 6 back in 2009. It was the record low since it was the record low since at least 2000 before Deshaun Watson. Negative 66.2 this season.
And remember, Jamarcus Russell also famously not a tape watcher, to the point where they tried to
Not a
trick
tape
him.
watcher.
They sent him tapes, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I watched them," and they were blank.
What you're talking about with the locker room stuff, right? I feel like I'm sure the Raiders locker room at the time was like, man, Jamarcus can't play. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but Jamarcus just can't play. We need Bruce Gradkowski out there, right? Like they probably didn't feel great about that. The discussion in New England this year, where Jacoby Brissett in this terrible offense in New England, and it's like, when do you go to the kid? When do you go to the kid? You're going to lose the locker room and all that discussion. But those are different discussions, because you have to sit there and maybe take your lumps with a Jamarcus Russell and hope that he figures it out, or you have to sit Drake May until he's ready so that he doesn't get killed by the offensive line, because you have a future that you're hoping for.
It's unprecedented.
The difference here, though, is this is the guy that you picked and paid a ton of guaranteed money to, and keep pushing the guaranteed money into the future.
And are contractually stuck with, unlike any quarterback ever. Like, that's the thing. This is genuinely unprecedented, because nobody has ever tied themselves so tightly and for such a long time to a quarterback. But it's a sunk cost. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't change anything. Yeah, it's a terrible situation. It's a little bit like the Panthers with Bryce Young, right? The chances of anything good coming from this, once you have sat Bryce Young down, are fairly minimal. You still have to do it. There's no good. It's just, what's the least bad thing that can happen? That's where Cleveland is right now. There is no good. It's only, what is the least bad you can do? And the least bad thing you can do is admit you screwed it up, sit the guy down, and give the ball to Jameis and say, hey, Jameis, go nuts. Like, just go out there and sling the ball around, see what happens. One more sad stat from Field Yates this time. The Browns have now become the first team in 10 years to score under 20 points in each of their first 6 games this season. Cleveland has now scored once in its last 29 drives.
Wow.
That's not great.
I mean, whether you're using EPA, actual points, it's all bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to Austin's.
Okay.
I mean, he's just got these fired up. Austin must be making
and again
tens of dollars from Twitter just off these tweets alone.
Just to reiterate, they have had a fairly easy schedule up until this point, and it gets fairly hard. Whatever we're saying right now.
They have the Chiefs down the road and the Ravens twice off the top of my head.
And the Steelers twice, and the Chargers, who now have one of the best pass defenses in the NFL. It basically, outside of 2 games against Cincinnati, which could go either way.
I kind of want this to play out.
That's what I'm saying. It gets hard from this point on. So every number that we're saying right now, which is all-time bad, is skewed positive by the fact that they've had a relatively easy schedule.
All right, I just need to see. I'm gonna read all of them. I'm gonna go down Austin Gale's timeline. I had this one fired up, and then I'm just gonna go down the timeline because people need to know these.
How many does he have?
I don't know, but there's a lot. Bottom 8 dropback success rates, weeks 1 through 6. Deshaun Watson is number 734 out of 741. So there are a few guys worse. We have David Carr, Mark Bulger, presumably at the end of his career, where you always reference.
It's
broken
David
Mark
Carr's
Bulger
in there as well. Broken Mark, broken David.
But these are like special levels of first-round quarterback busts, too.
Yes.
Josh Rosen, Akili Smith, poor Jay Fiedler, Blaine Gabbert, and Jamarcus Russell. That
must have been broken Jay Fiedler as well.
Probably broken because Jay was good before that.
So it's all-time bust quarterbacks and guys that were broken at the end of their careers by bad offensive lines.
Since, Bill Barnwell, since 2007, 566 quarterbacks have thrown at least 100 passes in the first 6 games of their team's respective seasons. First downs per pass attempt. Bo Nix, catching strays in this tweet, Deshaun Watson tweet. Bo Nix is tied for 564th. 22% of his passes have gone for first downs. And Deshaun Watson is dead last. 566, 22.1% of his passes have gone for first downs.
I do think now that the most sort of prescient part of all this is the locker room part, the Mitchell Schwartz element of it. Like,
I'm not done.
No, we can't spend the next hour reading off crappy Deshaun Watson
We sure
stats.
can.
Like, at some point.
One more.
Go on then. What's your one more?
Bottom 12 quarterbacks in EPA per dropback just since last year. So I'll give you the bottom 5. Number 27 in the league out of 31 qualifiers per his tweet here. Will Levis, then Daniel Jones, then Deshaun Watson. So he's 3rd worst. Then Zach Wilson and Bryce Young.
Mm-hmm.
Guys who, of course, had to lose their jobs because they were so bad. Zach Wilson and Bryce Young. At least lose their jobs and regroup elsewhere.
I mean, at this point, there is zero justification for keeping him as the starter that doesn't involve sunk costs.
In summation, Deshaun Watson-led offense right now is at the level of the biggest first-round, I hate using the word bust, but busts, failed former first-round quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson-led Browns offense is at that level right now.
He's basically playing the way Bryce Young played, which was enough to make Carolina give up on him 2 games into the season, go to Andy Dalton in a move that was raising the white flag and saying this guy's career here is basically over now and we have no alternative. Like, we don't have a future. We don't have a guy waiting in the wings. We are basically saying this was a mistake and all we can do now is surrender, but it's the right call because he's given us no choice. It's a different dynamic. The contract is different, but it's basically the same thing. They gave up on this guy 2 games into the season, and there was probably a greater chance, like, he's young, he's, very inexperienced. The Browns are in the same situation, but they refuse to acknowledge that reality. And I think a big reason Carolina did that is because the rest of the team was like, we can't keep doing this. Like, you've got to go away from this kid, sad though it is, and turn the keys over to Andy Dalton. The Browns have got to be in that situation now where the rest of that locker room is like, enough. Give it to somebody else. I don't care who. It just can't be this guy anymore.
Anything else on the Browns and their futility?
Again,
Tyler's
other than to say it's going to get worse.
Tyler's calling for mercy in there.
Yeah.
They played the Eagles.
They did.
And for Eagles fans here, you got A.J. Brown back, Devontae Smith back. You saw the long touchdown from Devontae Smith on the catch and run. And then A.J. Brown, I think that was kind of underthrown. And A.J. Brown is so good at...
Did it twice.
Yeah. I mean, the other... You had one deep ball caught, not for a touchdown. The touchdown in particular, though, the ability to just keep the cornerback shielded, catch the ball, hold on to it with one hand, and finish the catch, just completely changes this offense. I'm telling you, like, if A.J. Brown wasn't on the field yesterday with those 2 big throws, I mean, we're talking about the Eagles offense maybe being in a similar territory as the Browns. And if the Browns didn't have, of course, the Browns had that blocked field goal for a touchdown that kept them in it, but Eagles offense wasn't great outside of a few big plays.
No, A.J. Brown is so good at, I mean, there's so many different ways for a wide receiver to win on these plays, but he is so good at easing up and stacking the corner and just boxing him out of those deep balls so that he doesn't have to turn around and moss the guy and go up and high point it. But he's not waiting for it to arrive in his hands and it being wildly underthrown either. He's varying his pace and effectively stopping himself and the corner and then letting it get in and turning it into a sort of slightly contested situation, but not a really badly contested situation. Like, he's so good at that, which is a really kind of underrated element of being a kind of really good wide receiver deep down the field. Randy Moss, obviously Moss became like a verb, right? And we think the verb sort of to moss somebody is to go up over the top, take the ball away from the top. But Randy Moss, the reason he's one of the greatest wide receivers of all time is he could do that, or he could run right past you, or he was also really good at this, where he would stop. He would slow you up, he would box you out, and then at the last second, he would take that half step forward and extend himself and catch what looks like a perfectly thrown pass, but actually wouldn't have been if he'd kept running, right? A.J. Brown, same thing. If A.J. Brown keeps running full speed on both those deep shots, the ball looks fairly dramatically underthrown, and we're like, quarterback missed him twice. Instead, he turns both of them into really big plays.
Yeah, so A.J. Brown finishes with 116 yards on 6 catches. Devontae Smith, 64 yards, including the 45-yard touchdown. It was a strange game. There weren't a lot of plays in the red zone. Jalen Hurts had 5 first-down conversions, I think, all on the tush-push. So it was kind of like a quick game, and Eagles needed their big-time playmakers to make their plays.
Yeah.
And they did a pretty good job up front against that woeful Browns offensive line.
Yes. They were winning pretty handily. I mean, again, this game ends up reasonably close, but it's all because Myles Garrett individually leapt clean over an offensive line to block a kick, and the Browns returned it for a touchdown. That was, I mean, he didn't take a run at that. I don't think I've ever seen that before, where normally those guys are the linebackers, where they sort of take a run at it and leap over the line. Myles Garrett leapt out of his stance over the line of scrimmage cleanly.
Yeah, he's insane.
And then blocked the kick. I don't know that I've seen that before.
We had to spend a little time on that one, but that's it. You have no more use for that game or the Browns. For this week at least.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.